You are mute right now.
Yep. Better now?
Much better.
Perfect.
Excellent.
Sounds great.
Anthony, this is quite fantastic. We were actually making a bet. Is he going to make it? He's not going to make it, because I think this is the first time you actually have done a podcast where you have 4 Colombians and a Mexican ready to fire and do a ton of questions. So I think this is first of a kind, right?
Yeah, there's no question about that. I don't think I've ever been on a podcast with 4 Colombians and a Mexican unless we're doing a drug deal. But I don't do drug deals. It's never happened.
Or someone wanting to climb a wall.
So let me give you a little bit of background so we can get started. We're definitely going to talk about crypto, and we're going to talk a little bit, if you allow us, politics. So we have Luis, which you met in Singapore. By the way, what a terrific event was Token 2049 and Breakpoint. The one thing that amazed me the most is that I've never seen a type of conference that would amass 20 or 30,000 people. I mean, this is really, really gaining traction. And knowing that 40% of everything is happening in Asia, it's quite fantastic. I've never seen so many smart people together. But Luis, you met. He's actually in Monterrey right now. Monterrey, not Mexico, but Monterrey.
Great.
Next Pebble Beach. We have Federico Suarez. They're all friends from school. Federico is an ex-old city, the old guard from Citibank. He lives in London. And we have Lucas, which is like a financial advisor for a bunch of soccer players, like Premier League. Like I don't know if you follow soccer. He lives in Miami. And we have Dario, who's my cousin, and he is in Medellin right now. So it's great to have you. And we actually wanted to start because this type of audience doesn't know a lot of about the Moosh, and they don't know of what the things that you do. Like, for example, they don't know what Skybridge is. They don't know about the South Conference. So why don't we get started with a little bit of that? You tell us what the South Conferences are, and you've been in the world of finance. What is Skybridge, and why are you leaning into crypto so heavy right now these days? And also, Luis told me that you recently launched a Bitcoin book with Michael Saylor. So I think this is pretty interesting, and this is just hot off the press. And so why don't you tell us a little bit about it, and we'll get rolling.
Okay, so we're recording now, right? So it's okay.
Yeah, we are. We like to record.
It's a pleasure to be on with you guys, and thank you. And Luis, it's good to see you. And so what I would say is, you know, if you indulge me, I'll give you 30 seconds on my background, and then talk a little bit about the book and crypto. But 30 seconds on my background. I'm a product of a public school out on Long Island in Port Washington, New York. My dad was a crane operator. His dad was a coal miner. So it's a classic blue-collar American story. I ended up going to public high school, Tufts University, which is a small college outside of Boston. Then I went to Harvard Law School. I was there with Barack Obama and Justice Gorsuch. And so one went on to become president, one became a Supreme Court justice, and I'm the underachiever of the group. I'm here talking to you people, okay? Just give you a sense for things. But I then went on to Goldman Sachs, 7 years at Goldman. I left Goldman at age 32 and built a business that I sold by age 37. And I worked at Lehman Brothers, which was basically the company that eventually bought my business. And I left there in 2005 to start Skybridge. So Skybridge is a $4 billion investment manager. About a third of it now is in cryptocurrencies, primarily Bitcoin, but some Solana and Avalanche and a few others. We have about 20 employees here in this office behind me. It's going to be 20 years old in March of 2025. And so, but for 11 days, in the middle of the summer of July of 2017, I was Donald Trump's communications director. And so how did that happen? I was a longtime political fundraiser. When Trump beat up on some of the more establishment politicians, I went to go work for him. He won the presidency. He put me on his transition team, and he asked me to go work for him, and I did. I was fighting with him inside the White House. We disagreed on a number of different things. 11 short days after he hired me, I got fired. And that was a pretty famous thing here in the United States. It created some notoriety for me. Not necessarily good, frankly, but I held my ground. I explained to people what I thought, and went back to work. And so here I am. So lifelong entrepreneur. I do some political punditry. I have a podcast called The Rest is Politics with a woman named Katty Kay, which is a popular series. Pretty much
Actually follow it. Yeah, we've been following it. Yeah.
pretty much in the UK, but some other places around the world. And you know, I'm a worker. You know, I've written a couple of books. My 8th book is called The Little Book of Bitcoin. And so Michael Saylor helped me edit that book, and he also wrote the foreword to that book. And I'm going to say something, and then I'll let you guys talk. But what Michael said to me, you love Bitcoin. I said, yes, I do. Well, how much of your net worth is in Bitcoin? And so, guys, at current Bitcoin prices, about 55% of my liquid net worth is in Bitcoin. So it's a pretty concentrated bet. I do own some real estate. I do have some private equity, but I'm talking about my liquid net worth.
Yes.
And so Saylor said to me, so 55% of your net worth is in Bitcoin. Why are you recommending in this book that people put 2 or 3% of their net worth in Bitcoin? And so, Anthony, that implies that you have 50 other good ideas as good as Bitcoin, if you're saying 2% should go into Bitcoin. And I said, you're right, Michael. So I had to scrap the last chapter of the book. And I more or less put the conversation that I had with Michael in the book that I do think this is a very good idea. I certainly want people to be cautious if they don't understand it and they're not willing to embrace the volatility around Bitcoin. But, you know, I have a lot of my net worth in Bitcoin, and I do try to explain in about 200 pages why I think Bitcoin will be one of the largest capitalized assets in the world over the next 20 years.
When did you buy your first Bitcoin?
I bought my first Bitcoin in October of 2017.
Okay.
A couple of months after Michael. Michael bought his first Bitcoin in August. And so I was not a Bitcoin enthusiast early on. I didn't understand it, frankly. Like many people, I was a Bitcoin naysayer, didn't understand it, didn't like it. But I will say this to you, more homework that you do on it, more research that you do on it, the more comfortable that you get with it, and the more recognizable it is as an asset class, not just an instrument to invest in. It's not a stock or a bond, but it's actually an asset class. It's akin to gold or other types of commodities. And so once you understand that, you understand the size and scale of it. And I'll just make this one last point. I don't know anybody in my industry. I'm 60 years old, been on Wall Street for 35 years. I don't know anybody in my industry that has bought or thought about or done the research on Bitcoin that doesn't like it. I've never met somebody say, okay, I'm going to spend 2 weeks to read the white paper, do a very, very deep dive analytically on Bitcoin, and then say, oh, I've done all the work. I hate Bitcoin. Larry Fink, I hate Bitcoin. Do the work. Oh, you know what? I like Bitcoin. He now has the largest ETF launch in his history. Paul Tudor Jones, I don't like Bitcoin. Let me do the homework. Owns a lot of Bitcoin. Stan Druckenmiller. These are legendary investment managers, people that do the homework, no matter what their age is. If they do the homework, they end up liking Bitcoin.
Anthony,
What do you think?
why? What's the thesis behind your change towards crypto? And by the way, you're not the underdog here. You've been first in this podcast than Obama, so you're not the underdog.
So I would say a couple of things. I would say the first thing was I honestly didn't understand it. I didn't understand the math behind it. I didn't understand the technical properties of it. And the second thing is I didn't do the homework and correlate it to money. And so, not to bore you guys, but what is money? Money is a technology that we're using between each other to exchange goods and services without having to barter. I don't walk into the restaurant with my calf that I, raised on the farm, put it on the bar and say, here's your Bill Parmesan special for the next 2 weeks. Can I get 20 gin and tonics? I don't do that. I have slivers of paper in my pocket, or I have electronic credit card that I can transact with the restaurant. They know that if they hand whatever I'm giving them to somebody else, and I brought some props for you guys. So hold on. So see, these are It's actually not paper, actually. See, this is, look at, I'm Italian. We like to carry cash, right? So this is actually made out of cotton and linen if you Google it. But is this really worth anything? Okay, and so the short answer is, if we were in a philosophy class, no, it's not worth anything. It's just a small sliver of cotton and linen with some ink on it. So it's really not worth anything. But it is to us because we trust it. We know if I hand this to the maitre d' or I hand this to the valet, he's happy, he's going to buy a pizza, or he's going to give it to somebody else. And so what is this? This is a piece of technology that we use to barter with each other. And so when you understand Bitcoin, Bitcoin is really just a decentralized, open, transparent, fully distributed database. And it's a database that hundreds of thousands of people are working on to keep track of. And so a result of which it's actually hard money. The problem with this, and you guys lived in some Latin American countries, they make this. Okay, they cheapen this, they weaken this. We're doing it here even in the United States. This is the US dollar is still the supreme fiat currency, but we're all concerned about it because they're making too much of it. But what Bitcoin is, it has all the technical properties, it has all the boxes that we like historically in our money, but it has this even better thing that we've taken it away from the central banks and we've taken it away from the governments. And so what do we know about our governments? They print it. They're irresponsible with it. It's almost like our central banking community is a group of drunk drivers, and we've taken the keys of the car away from them, and we gave it to the Bitcoin network. And if you think about it that way, you can get very, very comfortable with Bitcoin as an idea, as a store of value, and as a commodity that we can get comfortable with. And by the way, it's probably not for my generation. As I said, I'm 60. But trust me, there's a 20-year-old out there, 40 years younger than me, that gets it. And he's going to be 60 someday. He's going to own a lot of Bitcoin. He or she is going to be very comfortable transacting in it.
It's very interesting that you actually mention it as a technology, and you show us the wad of $100 bills, because there's something that has made me realize that people from Latin America, because we use worse technology than the US dollar, we have been earlier at Bitcoin. I started buying my first Bitcoin in 2013 because I just overheard a bunch of kids here in San Francisco talking about Stellar Lumens, Coinbase, and we bought it. But for example, Luca's father used to trade in Wall Street. He's already dead, but the first thing that we all did is when we were growing up, we started buying dollars because we understood that if you had pesos in Colombia and when you saw inflation going to 30 or 40%, it's not easy. It's not difficult to kind of like put it in a balance and like say, okay, the dollar, it's a better technology than the peso. So nowadays, when you have cryptographic technology and when you have a database that runs on a ledger, then the switch is super easy. Do you believe that people from other countries outside of the US just have a better, I don't know, disposition to understand technologies like this one?
I mean, it's the most phenomenal question for New York centric and American centric financiers. And so the answer to the question is obvious. The answer is yes. I would say not just in Latin America or places like Colombia. What about Africa? I mean, They have destroyed the fiat currency systems in Africa. I can't tell you the number of people I talk to in Africa that are using Bitcoin, trying to proliferate Bitcoin, trying to do what the president of El Salvador did, is to allow Bitcoin to be a declared currency, a usable declared currency in the society, in the country. And so, I mean, just think about this, he was ridiculed, criticized for owning Bitcoin, criticized for buying Bitcoin, criticized for keeping Bitcoin when it bottomed out again in 2022. And yet look at him today. He just paid off $954 million of El Salvadoran debt.
You know who made the wallet for El Salvador? A Colombian team.
Is that right? Yeah. So there you go.
Yeah.
There you go. So you're preaching to the choir. Remember, I'm an internationalist. I travel all over the world. I travel to Latin America, travel all over Europe and the Middle East. I just got back from a trip from Dubai. I recognize the value of this being a global asset, and I recognize the value that there's been a lack of responsibility by many sovereign countries and their central banks, which have corrupted currency, made it hard for people in the countries of your origin to save their money because they can't leave it in peso. If they leave it in peso, the loaf of bread costs 2x or 3x more than it did the first day they earned that peso. And that's a theft, by the way. It's very important for people to understand this. When we live in inflationary-based societies, it's a theft. Now, if you're a rich person, you own a big house, well, you know what? Your house goes up in value. It protects you. But if you're a poor person and your money, like my father's money, was in cash and it goes down in value every year, it's like a theft. You're like stealing his time and his energy. And so this is another big, strong point of advocacy for Bitcoin.
Yeah, hey, Anthony, I wanted to ask you, could you tell us the story that I think you were starting to talk about when we talked about your book? When Michael Saylor made a few comments on the end of your book, and you actually had to go back and edit the book. I think that's a really good story.
Yeah. So, I'll be more detailed. So, I sent him the manuscript. He offered me some commentary. It's not quite finished. I then finished the book, sent him the final manuscript with my last chapter in it. And my last chapter was related to buying Bitcoin, right? Okay, I just made this 190-page advocacy explanation for Bitcoin. And so here are my 10 pages of my conclusion, what to do. Put 2% of your money in Bitcoin. Get yourself started, get off zero, put 2% of your money in Bitcoin. And so Saylor, who you know is a full-throated Bitcoin maximalist and has billions of dollars in Bitcoin and has torqued and changed his entire country to be a Bitcoin printing machine, almost like the Berkshire Hathaway of Bitcoin. He called me from his yacht in the Mediterranean. And he said, Mooch, I read this thing. It's really well written. There's a lot of good stories in it. Very, very easy to understand. I'm going to be recommending it to first-time Bitcoiners and so forth. But I take issue with your conclusion. Don't like your conclusion. I don't like the last chapter of the book. And I was like, oh, wow, I like the last chapter of the book. What's wrong with the book? And he's like, well, listen, let me ask you something. How much of your net worth is in Bitcoin? And I did. I said, as I said earlier, 55%. He said, well, your 55% of net worth is in Bitcoin. How many other ideas do you have? You're 60 years old. How many other great investment ideas do you have? Maybe you caught Microsoft or Google earlier or something like that. How many great investment ideas do you have? As great as Bitcoin. I said, no, sir, not many. That's why I have so much of my net worth in it. He said, well, you're suggesting 2%. That would imply that you have 50 ideas equal to Bitcoin. And you don't. And I think you're doing a disservice in this conclusion by suggesting 2%. So I literally went back and changed that chapter of the book. And I regaled people in the story that I'm telling you. And I said, look, I own 55%. I started with a 2% suggestion. The person that wrote the foreword of this book said that was the wrong answer. You draw your own conclusion. But maybe 2% is the wrong number, given the fact that you'd have to have 50 other great ideas as good as this one. And I can tell you, after 35 years on Wall Street, I don't.
That's something, Luis,
Sorry,
that's something
Hernan.
that we always talk. So how many good ideas do we have? And we really don't have a lot. That's why I always tell, what's the purpose of diversification? It doesn't make sense, especially if you're dealing with bad ideas. So I love that you actually made that point. You were saying, Lucas.
Yeah, I'm trying to relate to you, Anthony, and that story about 2 or 3%. Probably my liquid net worth right now is in I would say 50 or 60% in crypto. I have no Bitcoin. I'm more of a Solana guy. I sold all of my Bitcoin and I put it into Shadow, which is one of the, in the ecosystem of Solana. Maybe we could talk a little bit about that as well if you know it. But I was thinking, because I'm a financial advisor, as Hernan was saying, for professional athletes, soccer players, mostly from Colombia, and I advise zero crypto for them, because they're athletes, their careers, so their spam is, they retire probably 30, 35 years old, and it's still scary for me. But I was thinking on the background, if I have 60 of my liquid worth on crypto, I should probably be doing a bit of the same as Saylor told you. Hey, listen, if you're into this, you might as well. And I have thought a bit of some of my most close athletes to start putting at least 5% in crypto, but I haven't done so. I just wanted to share that.
So Saylor is doing to you to what he did to Anthony. Anthony's doing to you what Saylor did to Anthony in the
Exactly.
Well, I don't know the coin that you're referencing. I have to confess that that's a Solana-based coin.
Yeah.
But I will say this: I own a ton of Solana. And when I say my net worth, I'm talking about my personal holdings, Bitcoin. But for the company, I would say something like half of our cryptocurrencies, okay, our portfolio is Solana. And by the way, it didn't start that way. It's been a tribute to Solana's incredible success post FTX. Remember, if you start with something that's at 10% of your portfolio, it goes up 6x. It becomes a bigger portion of your portfolio.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And when did you start investing in Solana?
Good question. So I owned Solana before the crash. So I want to say my first couple of coins were in 2021. And so I wrote it down to 8. I started buying after the crash. And I think my average price is about 22. So we've done very well in Solana, but it was very painful on the way down, as you guys know.
You know who helped us to actually navigate the pain of Solana? It was Joe McCann, because I have a bunch of my friends that have invested in Joe McCann's fund too. And, and so the thesis behind Solana has been.
I think Joe's done your podcast, I think, right, Luis? I think you told me that.
Yes, right.
He's a very, very, very smart guy. I got a lot of respect for him.
Yeah, he's been twice on the podcast. Luis, so you were going to ask. Yes.
Probably, Anthony, you epitomize the American dream. I mean, you're a guy that comes from the North Shore of Long Island, and by the way, I lived there when I was a kid, right around there. And then you go to Harvard, you go to Wall Street, and then you turn crypto. What is there for let's say for the wider community to learn? Because I think that's a very interesting transition you've made around your life, and there's a lot of learnings for the wider community.
I mean, listen, I appreciate you saying that. I mean, I think it's important to stay young. Your age is really the state of your mind. That's not to mean that I'm not older. I can't move as quickly on the basketball court as I once did, but I think that your mind is actually neurally plastic. Your mind is adaptive, and so it's very easy to get stuck in a position, or to get stuck in an idea. Well, my world works this way. It works with a hardline, corded telephone. I have people that are my dad's age. They won't look at an email. They won't respond to an email. They don't even have a AOL. If some of you are old enough to remember AOL, America Online, they don't have an AOL account. And I think that has a tendency to make you old, and it makes for old thinking. And so for me, my peer group, I mean, Larry's to be applauded, and some of these other guys I mentioned, but my peer group is not for cryptocurrency, not for Bitcoin. In fact, if you look at the Democrats, if you're over the age of 60, those Democrats like Elizabeth Warren vote against it. They don't like it. They want to stop it. They do what Gary Gensler is doing in the United States. If you're under the age of 50, you're voting for it, and you're favorably disposed. So to me, if you stay young, get your mindset young, I think it can be incredibly rewarding, and I think you can find new things and you can embrace new things without necessarily the fear. And so I have a summer program here at Skybridge. I try to hire 20 kids every year. And I try to get them from really good schools, smart kids. I bring them in, and I'm learning from them, and they're learning from me. And I want to hear what they have to say about the future, because they're going into the future. I may get to a part of it, but I'm not going to get 40, 50 years of it. But someone age 20 will. And so what do they see? What are they locked into? And I think, Federico, that's really the answer. Staying young by being in touch with the young people and being willing to take risks that your contemporaries may not be willing to take.
Hey, Anthony, only because you mentioned, Gary Gensler, and what must happen for Bitcoin or crypto in general to become a bipartisan issue? Like, what are the things that need to happen? Who needs to be red pill on both sides of the political spectrum? What has to happen?
Well, I mean, Elizabeth Warren, who you probably know, the senator from Massachusetts, is a disaster. She's probably the worst senator of the last 50 years. She's also, even though she hasn't passed many pieces of legislation, is very powerful because she has all of her minions in places like the SEC, the Fed, Treasury, White House, etc. Absolute disaster. So I'm hoping that John Deaton can beat her. I'm hoping, but who knows? But her minion, Gary Gensler, again, probably the worst SEC chairman in our history. So I would just say if we can figure out a way to get rid of Elizabeth Warren and Gary Gensler, we're going to be a lot better. The Harris team is optimistic. The Harris team is saying the right things. They want blockchain technology, cryptocurrencies. They want the U.S. to maintain some level of dominance in the space. They want to maintain the mantle of U.S. financial services leadership. It's the deepest, widest, most liquid capital market in the world. I think they want that. So that's positive. I just think you have to age some of these people out, to be honest.
And Anthony, you mentioned in a recent podcast with Natalie, that, by the way, I think she's come into the podcast as well.
Yep.
That there was what seems to be some agreement between the Democrats in discussions that probably you helped lead with Novogratz and Mark Cuban around a potential proposal by the end of the year. How is that progressing? Any ideas?
Yeah, well, listen, I don't want to take any credit for it. Obviously, Mark Cuban is a way more influential guy than me, but I was in the room, and I think it's clear that the Democrats don't like losing. $190 million, $190 million US dollars this election cycle has gone in from the crypto space.
Yeah.
Those are crypto millionaires and billionaires that are trying to help candidates who are pro crypto. So, follow the money in US politics, as you guys know. People are coming in that direction.
All right. So last question regarding crypto, and then we can maybe take a little bit of a dive into the world of politics. Which one are you more bullish on, Solana or Ethereum?
Solana. And not that I don't have a position in Ethereum, but you just have to be careful because these are new technologies, and does anybody raise your hand on this podcast if you remember the search engine Ask Jeeves or Lycos?
I do.
Or Alta Vista. Does anybody remember those? And so there were points of access to get to the internet before Google arrived on the scene, right? Does everybody know that? But then Google came onto the scene. It was faster. It had an algorithm that did a better ranking system. It was better at collating the data, excuse me, and it became more efficient. And it knocked those guys out of the game, right?
Yep.
And so what I worry about with Ethereum, because of the fees, the gas charges associated with Ethereum, that it may be brought to some level of obsolescence by something like Solana. Now, there are things in the marketplace like Aptos and Sui, but they're not necessarily faster or more effective than Solana. Could they gain some share? Could they have some TVL? Could they be used as we go into the world of tokenization? Could those cryptocurrencies be used to tokenize things? I'm not going to say no, and I'm not going to say no to Ethereum. Ethereum will have a space. There are people in the United States and around the world that still have an AOL email account. It's part of our world, but it's not a Gmail account, or it's not a Microsoft mail account, right? It's a smaller part. And so I'm not saying that Ethereum is going to be made obsolete, but there are advantages to using Solana versus Ethereum. And so developers that are looking at the two, I would say it's almost 3-1 now. They're choosing Solana over Ethereum. So if you ask me on this podcast, you didn't ask me, but I'm going to answer it anyway. Can Solana flip Ethereum? Can Solana flip Ethereum? I believe that it can. And I think that's reflected in my allocation of capital towards Solana.
You're looking at your you're looking at our
Everybody on this podcast would agree with you, and hopefully you're right.
So shifting a little bit gears into the world of politics. So all of us have migrated at some point of our lives to the US, but we did it through the difficult way, meaning we had to either invest in the US, we had to do a ton of paperwork. Lucas is living in Miami, he has his green card, he had to create a structure, pay taxes. I migrated, and it was a process that took me like 5 years. I worked for a company, I founded companies. The amount of paperwork, the stacks of paperwork that we had to do were this big. And so when we go to this world of politics and we know the candidate that you're cheerleading for, we might have a little bit different, let's say, tendency to be more supportive of other migration policies. But we just wanted to get a little bit of kind of like the color and sensation, because one of the things that Luis was mentioning before the talk is that one of the things that you do pretty well is that you always try to bring Republicans and Democrats together. And there's not a lot of individuals that try to have a common point of conversation, and everything becomes too how do you say, Luis? Everything becomes too political and
polarized. I think Anthony does a great job, especially specifically
Polarized.
crypto. I think you're a leading voice in that, Tony. I think you've done a really good job. I was there in person listening to you in Singapore, and I could hear the crowd just, really, really, your message really resonates with everybody there. And so I think what you do is, we can have a disagreement in terms of politics. We could have a disagreement in terms of who's a better candidate. But at the end of the day, you're really doing a good job bringing people together in terms of crypto and how crypto has to be a bipartisan issue, right? So that's one of the main, not the only reason, but one of the main reasons I really follow you, and I like to listen to what you have to say.
Well, I agree. It's very kind of you. Listen, I just, I work for Trump. And so there are 40 of us that work for him that know how dangerous he is. But the other thing he's doing is he's talking about non-white immigrants to the United States as subhuman. They're eating dogs and cats, and it's us versus them. And when you do that in a society, it's very corrosive. He's using the same language to derogate non-white immigrants, same language that the Nazis used against the Jews in the 1930s. So for me, that's like mission over. There's no way I can support a candidate like that. And, you should take him at his word. If he says he's going to use the American military on people that are his political adversaries, or pull licenses away, or he wants to end the independence of the Fed. And he says that the Fed should not be independent. And so, any country that's done that, you guys have had experience in Latin American countries, any political leader that's taken away the central banking independence, the currency ends up in a shit, post, it ends up in a toilet. Look at what's going on in Turkey as an example, after Erdogan took over the currency. So for me, It's just not for me. I'm a lifelong Republican. If they had put up a different candidate, that candidate probably would have done very well in this election. This election tied for a reason. There's lots of double negatives going on in here. Some people are voting for a candidate, but trust me, I think there's an equal number, if not more, people that are voting against the candidate. I think it's just something to think about.
Maybe why do you think? Talking politics and geopolitics, why do you think the U.S. has forgotten about its backyard? Latin America having been so important for the U.S., a strong partner, it's basically left the space open for China to come for its rare earths, its lithium, ports, you name it. And it's sometimes mind-boggling.
So what's the question, though, exactly? The question is what, though? What?
Why do you think the U.S. forgot about LATAM being such a relevant partner?
Yeah. Well, a lot of really bad decisions, a lot of bad policy decisions. Some of them were very politically expedient. Franklin Roosevelt, if you remember, he had a good neighbor policy. Okay. Franklin Roosevelt basically said that, he was an adherent to the Monroe Doctrine. He didn't want people in our hemisphere. And he thought it was important for a wealthy country like the United States to help other countries. We dumped a tremendous amount of aid into Guatemala, Honduras, Ecuador. And the idea was we were going to build bridges and roads and tunnels and schools and give money to businesses and entrepreneurs and avoid the politicians, who many times the politicians were running some level of a dictatorship and some level of corruption. But we were doing that so that we could create opportunity in those areas of the world which would stop a migrant crisis. Like an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure, right? You could spend $2 or $3 million in economically disadvantaged areas, and those people will stay. Or you could not spend the money like we're doing now. You have a $25 billion problem at the border. So there's been an indifference born from political expediency. And, it's sad for me to say this, but the country's really changed. We used to be a country run by former veterans of World War II. They were committed to a cause. They adhered to the Constitution. They liked each other, even if they were different parts of the country. 80 years later, we've got a lot of tribalism in the country, a lot of division. Social media has been infected by the Soviets, former Soviet Union, the Russians, and some of our adversaries. And they want us to hate the people of Latin America. And Donald Trump feeds into that. If he's talking about people eating dogs and cats, he's trying to tell you that they're not human. They're subhuman. Okay. Now you may not think he's talking about you, but he is talking about people in Latin America. So whether you like it or not, it does include you. And I find it revolting and I find it reprehensible. And to me, it's disqualifying. I don't want somebody that, the first name of the country I live in is United. It's the United States of America. It's not the United States of America. It's not the tribal states of America. It's not the us versus and them states of America. That's terrible.
Anthony, back in 2016, I was working in a company in San Francisco, and the CEO of the company was a guy that I had a very good connection, and he was all pro Hillary, but I was in charge of like the social media and SEO of the website, and he and I made a bet, because I started seeing this phenomenon of Trump having a lot of like visual repetition on sites like 9gag, just becoming like a meme. And I bet with him $100 that Trump would win, and he said, "You know nothing about politics. You were not born here. I'll take the bet." Obviously, I won. He paid the bet, but I'm starting to see the same phenomenon. You actually understand the importance of a podcast. If not, you would have not taken this podcast, because you understand the reach, the composition of different audiences, and the impact that it has. One of the things that amazes me about Trump, is the amount of podcasts that he has done. He has done the Nell Brothers, he has done Lex Friedman, he has done Logan Paul, he has done, I don't know, a multitude. And all in, he probably has amassed north of 1 billion or 1.5 billion views. I mean, you take a Super Bowl that's probably 125, 150 million views. That's kind of like the max. Now, Kamala hasn't done a single podcast. She has done mainstream media, but she hasn't done podcasts. So could there be a chance that everything that people interpret is just the filter of mainstream media? And on the other side, what's happening is just Trump is just becoming a meme machine. Like, for example, you take the world of crypto. Luis was telling me, hey, should we buy the Donald meme because he was seen taking a picture or just giving out French fry? The man is just a media machine. I mean, 1.5 billion views against whatever Kamala has on mainstream media. Don't you think that's a significant difference if we're talking about audience impact? And one of the things that we simply don't know is that, I mean, you could have Nate Silver doing his polls, but then you have the Polly whatever, and that's kind of like a different view. Are we just like really interpreting what the media tells us, or we don't know how to synthesize the information that other worlds and formats of information? Because the same would, you could say that the same thing happens in the world of crypto. You read technology, but some people get it, some people don't. You read and understand media, some people get it, some don't. And here's a story being told of a bigger size. And that's a long question, but do you think the impact of what Donald Trump does is bigger than what Kamala does?
I think it's a good question. I mean, she's been on a few. She was on Call Me Daddy, which has got tens of millions of listeners. She's been on a few. She hasn't done the proliferation of interviews that he has done. Okay, and that could be helping him. I'm not saying it isn't. I think the image of the McDonald's fries, some people say that hurt him. Other people say it helped him. I think that helped him. I think that was a good image for him. But up against that, he's talking about the penis size of Arnold Palmer. He's in an event in Latrobe, PA, and all he wants to talk about is penis size. He's talking about bringing the military to bear. He's talking about liquidating 50,000 jobs in the government and replacing them with people. He's talking of his own persuasion, meaning passing a loyalty test. He's saying he's going to deport 15 million people. So there are 6 people on this podcast, and I'll let you know right now, you may think of yourself differently, but he's deporting every fucking one of you, okay, myself included. And he's going to get the fucking SWAT machine, and he's going to get the armored vehicle out. He's going to put you in a fucking cage, okay, and he's going to send you to a concentration camp because your name is Espinoza, yours is Palacio. You've got a Suarez on here, or a Jaramillo, another Jaramillo, and a Scaramucci. You're fucking baked in Donald Trump. And now you may not see yourself like that. That's how he sees you. You're vermin, and you're trash to him. You're subhuman. So you go ahead and support him, but that's what he wants to do to the 6 people on this podcast.
I might be changing my.
I love it.
That's what Tony told me when we met in person in Singapore. By the way, you're gone.
You're not white enough for Donald Trump, and Ernan, you look like a white dude. I mean, but your fucking last name's killing you, so you're going to get thrown right out of the country.
Yeah, Jaramillo. Lucas, you were going to ask Anthony something.
No. I was just saying that I'm probably changing my vote. I mean, it's my philosophical vote because I have a green card. I can't vote yet. But there are a lot of things of Kamala or the Democrat Party that I don't like. And you were actually you were.
I don't like the woke bullshit. I don't like the hard left nonsense. I don't like all of that stupid stuff that they do. Okay, but this is about a fight about the democracy, and this is about a fight of us figuring it out over time. Okay, I don't want to burn down the system. Every single person on this call has benefited from the system. Why do I want to burn down the system? Okay, he wants to burn the system down. Okay, you got to listen to what he's saying. listen to what he's saying. You know, there's a great book called The Nazi Mind. Okay, it's written by Lawrence Rees. What do? You dehumanize other people. You create stereotypes, us versus them. You make people lose faith in the institutions. He wants you to lose faith in the vote. This is a motherfucker that didn't concede the election. This motherfucker is telling you that the election got stolen from him. Hundreds of millions of dollars, billions of dollars of lawsuits have been lost. There's been no areas of the election that's been seen as fraudulent. Yet he's a buddy of Vladimir Putin's, and Vladimir Putin wants everybody in the United States and around the world to think that their elections are fraudulent and that there should be great cynicism in the approach to thinking about your election. Okay, and this idiot, this useful idiot, is a slave to Vladimir Putin. And that's the guy you want running the United States. It's against your interest, Lucas, to do that. If you want to do that because you think it's macho, because he's an orange, he's a pasty fuck with orange war paint on, and so you think that that's the representation of an alpha male, when all he is just a real bully. Okay, is being a bully an alpha male? There's no kindness in that. There's no patriarchal attitude towards that. This is a very insecure, mean, cruel person that's running on misogyny, running on racism, running on cruelty, and he's running on anti-immigration. And that's the guy you want to be president. Go ahead, vote for him. He's not going to give you what you want. He's transactional. Some people say, I'm voting for him. He's pro-Israel. He likes Putin. Putin's tied to the Iranians. What do you think he's going to do to Israel? He's going to toast Israel. Oh, I'm running because he loves crypto. He loves crypto today. Okay, he hated crypto 3 years ago. There's no consistency in his personality.
So you're actually making some interesting points. Well, although I believe they lean a little bit on.
You look in the mirror and see a white person, Ernan. That's what you see. So you think you're okay. But when the dominoes are getting hit, the domino's going to land into you. Okay?
Yeah, okay. Let me ask you something. If
you don't like what I'm saying, right? Because he knows what I'm saying is true, and it's hitting him right in the chest. You don't like what I'm saying. You know, he thinks Trump is.
I don't like him as a human being.
Orange
to be honest
savior.
with you. At all.
I have. So here's my opinion has been formed as in the following way. I actually didn't like Trump at the beginning, but after living 10 years in California and doing what the Democrats have done to this beautiful state, I started to have different change of mind, and so I'm no longer convinced of.
So I mean, there's more billionaires in California than any other place in the world. There's more people that have started in California at zero, worth $100 million, than any other place in the world. It's the fourth largest economy in the world if you pull California out of the United States. And they have made some stupid decisions. I'm not saying they haven't, but when you are in a port city in the United States, and the United States has always been accepting of immigrants. There are immigrants like Sergey Brin that came to the United States penniless that went on to create Google. And there are people like Albert Einstein that came to the United States penniless that saved us in the Second World War. So when you're coming into a port city, whether it's New York or California, you do need a social safety net for those people. You do need it. Okay, did they make mistakes? They're acknowledging it. You know, I was with Governor Newsom at the debate in Philadelphia. He's trying to clean up the homeless situation. They went too far to the left. Okay, I hear you. I understand that. But if that's a reason to burn down the system, and you're in California for a reason. It's beautiful. The weather's beautiful. It is a cultural icon for the world. It's an exportation of a dream factory, not just Hollywood, but tech, biotech, aerospace. You know, Elon Musk is desperate to get out of California. He keeps finding himself back in California because that's where the engineers are. That's where the great universities are. Okay. And so, yeah, there's problems in California. But if you think that Donald Trump is the answer because you think that we're going to have more left leaning, the left has woken up. Okay. That's the only thing that I could say about woke. They have finally woken up and recognized that woke makes you go broke, and they've got to get back to the middle. Okay, so if you want to burn the place down because you don't like some trash in California, I hear you. I don't like the trash here in New York City, but we're working with the business leaders and the political leaders here in New York City to fix it. We don't have a choice, really, right? We're trying to fix it, but we're going to burn the place down. And by the way, these places, Hernan, they need social safety nets because there's millions of poor people that are arriving in these port cities that are looking to live a portion of the American dream, or they're migrating up from Mexico and other parts of Latin America.
And Anthony, there's a reason why you are working with the Harris administration in order, let's say, to balance out those ideas from the woke side.
You think if Cuban and I would be with her if she was going to tax unrealized gains, this stupid, nonsensical communist bullshit?
That's why I'm saying
she's not gonna do that. You know, you want people. This is what I said in Singapore. You want people like me on her team to get these people into the middle. Okay, I'm trying to get her in the middle. One thing I'll say about her, you got to give her credit for. You know, she's embraced me. She let me work on debate prep. She let me into the spin room to represent her. She's got Cheney with her. Okay, if she was a communist and all this stupid nonsense, she wouldn't have people like me and Liz Cheney on her team.
Okay, so hey, cool.
But Ernan, I'm going to get you on the top of that list. You know, I know a lot of Trump people. When he wins the election, and he's going to start the deportation. Okay, I'm going to say you because you're a fucking Trump supporter. I'm going to get you on the top of that list. I'm going to call my boys at the Trump thing and say, I know you get deported. But you got to get Jarmillo out of the country with me, okay? Bang on his door. He's in California. Bang on his door with the SWAT team, like the whole Elian Gonzalez fiasco, and pull his ass out of his house.
But I hear you,
okay,
Anthony. I hear you, and I honestly, I don't like either, man. To be honest with you, you know.
So
and I'm not voting.
It's a negative election, and so you got to pick the lesser of the two evils, man.
That's true, and that's the way we try to do it in Colombia, and we ended all fucked up because, you know, whatever. But let me ask you this, like what you're saying that we all look white and whatever, and if Trump wins, you know, our fucking asses we're gonna be back in Colombia probably, like you're saying. What's it not that if Kamala wins, your asses and Cheney will be kicked out, and then she'll be, you know, on the left again, you know? Like
maybe, but they believe in the democracy. So 4 years later, she'll be out of office. Trump will be long gone. All of Trumpism will be long gone. Glenn Youngkin, Nikki Haley, Ron DeSantis. Okay, there are smart politicians on the right that believe in the American system of democracy. They don't want to end this. Trump's telling people if he gets in, he wants to stay in. He feels he was gypped out of the 2020 election. So he really feels he should serve at least 8 years.
There was a phrase that really caught my attention, and that really, you know, it's really fucking up my mind and changing the way I'm thinking. And you said it's an overtime thing. It's that we want to save democracy, and it's overtime. And this is done by voting for Kamala and not for Trump. But sometimes, like El Salvador, you see El Salvador, which is Bukele, and he's a great example, and I think we all root for that guy. But he's kind of a Trump in that sense that, in the long run, is El Salvador going to be fine, or is it going to be, you know, this autocratic?
Lucas, I don't know the answer to that because I don't live in El Salvador, and I do praise what he's done. And it seems like it's a safer place to live and people are happy there. But autocrats usually end in a bad situation. Autocrats bring with them kleptocracy and corruption and a funnel of greed at the top where there's a feeding frenzy of a very small group of people while the rest of the people are suffering. Okay, South America has roughly the same footprint as North America. Same natural resources, same coastal areas, same beautiful topography. North America did better than South America. Okay, why? Okay, if you read David Landis's book about this, it has to do with the political system. A flatter, more diffuse, decentralized political system leads to more independent thought, more creativity, and more industrialness. A autocratic political system leads to corruption, greed, rampant inflation, a very small group of people living well. You know, when I was in Cuba, where do the Castros live? Oh, they live in villas on the water. Oh, they have their own electrical generation? Yes, they do. Oh, they get their fuel first before the citizens? Yes, they do. Okay? And so fair, flatter systems where the people are working for the people and not the citizens working for the dictator. Those are the countries that do better. Okay, just look at sociology. Okay, Mr. Trump wants to end that. He's made it very clear that he wants to end that.
And let me ask you something.
Oh, he doesn't really mean it. Okay, so now you're voting for a political candidate that's making promises that you're hoping he doesn't commit to.
And I totally agree with you with what you were saying about autocrats, and obviously, you know, but you know, us coming from Colombia, and we're dealing with a son of a bitch of its own, and the worst is that he has fooled Europe, and everybody thinks he's this great guy that has an amazing speech. But when we fall, and probably that happened to El Salvador and to Argentina now with Milei, when a country falls on the hands of a Castro, you know, on the Fernandez and Kirchner in Argentina, can you really vote for someone in the center, in the middle, and things will work out? Or do we need a Bukele to fix things? And then, you know, I don't have the answer to that.
High, yeah.
But come on, man, you don't want to go in that direction. Once you go in that direction, the trust in the system dematerializes. Okay, there's no such thing as a benevolent dictator in a modern society. Okay, you know, Bukele's running a 7 million person country. This is the 330 million person country with the largest economy in the world. You want somebody that's willing to subordinate themselves to the system. You know, Cicero once said, we are slaves to the law in order to be free. We have to subordinate ourselves where no one is above the law. Okay, and that's the freest opportunity. You sound like Curtis Yarvin or Peter Thiel, where Peter Thiel's out there publicly saying that the democracy is obsolete and we need to have it run by a group of oligarchs or wise people. Go read the remains of the day. Go read the remains of the day, where they're laughing at the butler. They're claiming he doesn't know anything and shouldn't be part of the democracy, where the aristocrats are siding with the Nazis. The aristocrats get it wrong too, and so do dictators. But you know what's not wrong? A very flat, decentralized system that's very messy with lots of checks and balances. What did Churchill say? Democracy is the worst form of government until you consider all other forms of government. So, guys, I gotta go though, because I got a 12 o'clock though. But Hernan, don't worry, you're gonna get deported. I'm gonna be on that immediately. Okay.
Don't get me on the list. I'll change my mind.
I'm gonna get you on the list. Okay. Trump's gonna win. The orange guy's gonna be in there. When they knock on the door, okay, you know, you're gonna be in a different camp than me though, because I live on Long Island, but you'll get deported. Don't worry.
I know your phone. Anthony, one last thing.
Yeah.
One last thing. When can we have like a SAL conference in Medellin, in Colombia?
Ooh. So I'm open to doing that, but I would have to get help from the government. You know, I don't go into all these other countries, whether Abu Dhabi, Singapore. We're about to do something in Bermuda. The country helps us. You know what I mean? Because I don't know the country. I don't know the area. I can't
we know Colombia. Maybe we can help you with that. But
yeah,
but
you can introduce me to the tourism board, or the government wanted to get a group of international thought leaders into the country. They thought it was beneficial, like they do in Singapore. You know, that token 2049 is well supported by the Singaporean government. Trust me. Same thing with Breakpoint, you know?
Yep.
I've done my conference there. They've been very, very helpful to me, and they take out a lot of the risk, and they also cut a lot of red tape for me. You know, if I just walk in there by myself and say, hey, I'm going to do a conference, it's impossible.
Lucas, you think we could do it?
Absolutely. Yeah, we'll make it happen for sure.
Anthony, it's a pleasure.
Good to meet
It was a pleasure.
with you guys.
Pleasure to meet you.
Thank you.
Anthony,
Hernan's a little upset now because he knows
Oh, no,
he's really not white.
We'll see. We'll
He
have
looks
to
at here, he's
Vamos,
white.
Kamala.
He's really
Vamos,
not white. He's
Kamala.
not really white in Trump's America. Okay, he's getting a little worried. See you guys.
all right, man. Thanks a lot.
Cheers.
No